It started with a distant explosion that shook the ground beneath the city of Varentel, the capital of the Zalari Empire. The sky, always greenish-blue on this side of the galaxy, flickered with strange lights. Alarms screamed through the towers, and the streets filled with panicked civilians. Something was coming, something unexpected. Inside the high hall of the tribunal, 12 alien judges sat behind a curved platform of black stone. Their long robes shimmered like oil in water, and their eyes held no mercy. In the middle of the chamber stood a young alien woman, her wrists bound with glowing restraints. Her name was Alani. She was not a soldier, not a traitor, just a scientist who had asked the wrong question at the wrong time. You shared protected knowledge with a human, one of the judges hissed. You crossed the boundary between species. I only tried to save lives, Alani answered. Her voice trembled, but she didn't look away. The virus was spreading. They were dying. That was not your decision, another judge said coldly. And for that, you are sentenced to death. Alani didn't speak again. What would have been the point? She already knew this day was coming. Ever since her secret had been discovered, she had counted each hour like a drop of cold poison. The tribunal had no room for mercy, only law. And the law said that helping humans, especially giving them medical data, was treason. Outside the hall, hidden among the shadows, stood a man in a dark cloak. He wore an old breathing mask that hid most of his face, but anyone who knew Earth would recognize his eyes, human eyes. His name was Mason Creed, and he had come to this world to bring Alani back, but this wasn't just about rescue. No, something bigger had started. Because the Zalari Empire had quietly broken an ancient agreement. An agreement made with Earth. An agreement that said no human would be judged or sentenced in an alien court. But now, by charging Alani for helping humans, they had shattered that trust. And Mason wasn't the only one who noticed, he whispered into the small mic hidden behind his ear. They've sentenced her. I need phase 1 ready. A calm voice answered. Affirmative. Strike team in orbit. Do you need a distraction? Not yet. I want to try something first. He stepped forward, removing the cloak. 2 Zalari guards stopped him, aiming their energy staffs. No entry. This is a secured tribunal chamber. Mason slowly raised his hands. My name is Mason Creed. I'm here on behalf of Earth. You're holding one of ours. She's not human, the taller guard replied. She helped us. That makes her part of our cause. And by your own law, if she's punished for it, Earth is involved. The guards hesitated. The older one muttered into his cum, and a few seconds later, the heavy tribunal doors opened with a mechanical hiss. Inside, silence fell as the human walked forward. The judges stared down at him, clearly displeased. You are not welcome here. One judge barked. This is internal justice. You have no place. I do now, Mason interrupted. Because you just made it our business. Alani turned her head, eyes wide in shock. Mason, what are you doing? Making sure you don't die today, he said. The lead judge stood. You insult our court with this stunt. Do you plan to threaten us? Earth is weak. Your kind barely holds a seat in the Galactic Council. I'm not here to threaten, Mason said calmly, but I am here to remind you. The 219 Accord was signed by your Emperor and Earth's President. If you harm her, Earth will have full right to respond. The judges laughed dry, metallic sounds that echoed around the room. One of them gestured lazily. Your world has no ships fast enough, no weapons strong enough, and no allies left. Mason smiled slightly. That's what you think. The floor rumbled again, but this time it wasn't from distant fighting. A soft vibration filled the air, growing louder, closer. Outside, something huge passed overhead, dark, fast, and silent. In orbit, a classified Earth cruiser had just dropped into stealth range. Last warning, Mason said. Hand her over. peacefully, or this planet's skies will look different by morning. Alani stared at him, struggling to breathe. She didn't know what he had done. She didn't know how many lives were in danger now. But one thing she did know: he had come. He had kept his promise. One judge stood slowly. His voice was colder than before. You have 1 hour. If she is not gone from this planet by then, her death will be followed by yours. Mason nodded once. Understood. The guards didn't try to stop him this time. Mason walked toward Alani, pressed a device against her cuffs, and the binding snapped open with a soft click. You're insane, she whispered. Probably, Mason said, placing his hand gently on her shoulder. But I'm not leaving. You behind. They walked out of the tribunal chamber together. Behind them, silence returned, but only for a moment. The war that had been quiet until now was about to roar into life. Asterisk. The escape from the tribunal building was not easy. The moment Mason and Alani stepped out, security drones activated. Red lights flashed across the stone walkways, and the shrill sound of lockdown alarms echoed through the air. Zalari guards moved fast, blocking exit paths and scanning for intruders. The sky was already shifting. Earth's stealth cruiser, still cloaked, disturbed the magnetic field above. It wouldn't stay hidden forever. This way, Mason said, pulling Alani into a narrow service tunnel behind the tribunal. I can't run fast, Alani gasped. They kept me weak on purpose. Just hold on to me, Mason said, wrapping her arm over his shoulder. We've got 43 minutes. They moved quickly through the damp tunnel. Steam hissed from broken vents. Lights flickered. Somewhere above, a guard squad barked orders and began sweeping each level. Alani stumbled, but Mason didn't slow down. Every second counted. How did you even get past their border scans? She asked, still breathless. I had help, Mason said. There are some in the Empire who don't agree with the tribunal. Quiet supporters, even among their own. She looked at him, confused. Then why risk all this? For me? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he scanned a panel beside an old door and forced it open with a pulse chip. I'll tell you when we're off this planet. The door led into a dark chamber with a broken ladder. They climbed down into the underground tram network, a place most Zalari had forgotten about. The old trains hadn't moved in years, but Mason had a plan dive far above them. The tribunal judges were already preparing for retaliation. One sent a direct alert to the planetary defense grid. Another issued orders to capture the human alive. He will be made an example, the judge said. Earth must learn not to interfere. But not all agreed. A silent figure watched from the balcony inside the tribunal. She wore a black hood and didn't speak, even when spoken to. She was one of the inner circle Judge Ralhara, but long ago, she had known Alani. In another time, they had studied together, laughed in quiet gardens, shared secrets of science. Now, Ralhara remained silent, but her eyes followed the fleeing pair through hidden surveillance feeds. In the underground tram station, Mason found an old terminal. He powered it with a small solar node from his gear pack. Tell me this thing still runs, he muttered, typing commands into the broken console. Alani sat nearby, rubbing her wrists. Even if it does, the rails are monitored now. They'll see us the moment it moves. That's the idea, Mason replied. They'll think we're going one way while we go another. He activated a false signal that sent a dummy cart speeding toward the west tunnel. Meanwhile, he helped Alani into a maintenance hatch beside the tracks. Shortcut? She asked, raising an eyebrow. Something like that. Leads to the surface transport pads. My ship's locked in orbit waiting for our signal. As they crawled through the narrow tunnel, the sound of drones passed above. The false tram had worked. Zalari guards were chasing it, unaware their targets had taken another route. But they weren't safe yet. At the far end of the tunnel, a sealed gate blocked their path. Mason pulled a small disc from his belt and stuck it to the metal. This should blow it open just enough. He was interrupted by a sudden thud behind them. A section of the wall had collapsed, and two Zalari soldiers crawled through with glowing weapons drawn. "Drop the human!" one shouted. Ilani screamed as one of them fired, hitting Mason in the shoulder. He fell back, gritting his teeth in pain. The second soldier aimed at Ilani, but before he could shoot, Mason raised his pistol and fired twice. The shots were precise. Both soldiers dropped instantly. "Are you okay?" Ilani asked, crawling to his side. "I'll live," he said, clutching the wound. "We need to move now." The disc finally exploded, opening a small hole in the gate. Smoke filled the tunnel, but it was just enough space for them to squeeze through. On the other side, moonlight poured in from a cracked ceiling above. They had reached the edge of the tribunal zone. Mason pressed a beacon chip into the ground and activated it. A low hum filled the air. Above the planet, the Earth cruiser received the signal. A pod launched, cloaked in shielding, racing toward the surface to extract them. "We have maybe 4 minutes," Mason said. "You have to go first." "What about you?" Ilani said, fear in her eyes. "I'll cover you. Get to the pod." "If I don't make it." "No," she cut in. "Not after all this." But Mason shoved the emergency beacon into her hand and pulled her forward. "Don't waste this. You still have a chance to live." From the ruins behind them, more guards were closing in. Red beams lit the tunnel walls. Ilani stared at him for one long second. Then she turned and ran toward the rising pod light. She didn't see Mason turn back toward the enemy with a grim look in his eyes, blood dripping down his arm, and a plan still burning in his mind. The extraction pod lowered silently from the clouds, its black body barely visible against the night sky. Ilani climbed up the rubble, slipping more than once on the cracked stone. Her legs trembled with exhaustion. Her mind screamed to turn back, but she forced herself forward. Inside her hand, the beacon still pulsed a soft blue. It was warm against her skin, like Mason's grip had been minutes ago. He was behind her now, fighting alone. She reached the landing platform just as the pod opened with a hiss. Two figures in armored earthsuits stood inside. One of them extended a hand. "Commander Creed ordered your immediate retrieval." "Come quickly." Ilani hesitated. "He's still down there." "He's injured." The soldier didn't respond. "Protocol said extraction first, backup later." She climbed in, teeth clenched. As the pod lifted, her eyes locked onto the ground below. In the smoke and chaos of the collapsed tunnel, she saw flashes of light, red and white flashes from weapons. And nothing. Back in the ruins, Mason ducked behind a broken wall as plasma bolts zipped past his head. The Zalari were hunting him. Like an animal. He gritted his teeth, pulling out his last 2 charges. One was a stun bomb. The other was more creative. "Still got 1 surprise left," he muttered. A shout came from behind. Mason turned and saw 4 Zalari guards rushing in. He threw the stun bomb into the narrow corridor. It exploded with a sharp crack, flooding the space with blinding light. The guards stumbled, groaning in confusion. Mason dashed out of cover and fired twice, disabling the first 2. The others regained their balance fast, but Mason was faster. He didn't want to kill unless he had to. But the tribunal had made it clear they weren't interested in capturing anymore. They wanted blood. He reached for his cum. "Control, this is Mason Creed. Target is extracted. I'm still in hot zone. Requesting immediate secondary lift coordinates locked on my ping." Static. Then a response. "Negative, Commander. Orbital defenses are active. Extraction window has closed." Mason cursed under his breath. "Then keep the pod in orbit. I'll find another way." He wasn't ready to die yet. Above the planet, Ilani sat in the pod's small med chamber. She let the human doctor scan her, even as her heart felt like it was falling apart. Can you track him? She asked. The female officer beside her shook her head. The tribunal just activated a planetary jamming field. It's blocking most signals, but he's down there. Alani snapped. The officer met her eyes. He knew the risks, ma'am. Those words hit like a punch. I can't leave him, she whispered. Alani stood and moved toward the back console, her hand hovering over the emergency override. She knew Earth protocol well enough to understand what she was about to do was wrong. But so was abandoning someone who had saved her. Don't do it, one of the soldiers warned. I'm going back, she said calmly. Open the hatch. On the surface, Mason crept through a shattered building. His shoulder burned with pain, and blood soaked his shirt. The city was waking up now. More drones. More patrols. The tribunal was in full alert mode. He wasn't going to make it out the same way he came in. But he had one last option. Deep below the tribunal zone, hidden under rubble and sealed chambers, lay an old Zalari transport bay. It hadn't been used in years, but Mason had done his homework. If he could reach it, he might be able to launch one of their hidden skimmers and fly under the radar. He checked his datapad. Location marked. Distance, 2.3 kilometers. Time, uncertain. He moved fast, avoiding open streets, sticking to shadows. Drones buzzed above, scanning everything. At one point, he had to dive into a trash chute to avoid detection. But pain was a distant thought now. Survival was the only goal. Back in orbit, Alani argued with the pilot. You can't stop me. This is still my life, my choice. You think he wouldn't come back for you? The pilot looked conflicted. He gave an order, and I'm giving mine. The pod turned, dropping fast through the atmosphere. Mason finally reached the sealed blast door of the old bay. It was covered in vines and dust. A metal keypad blinked dimly. He tried one access code. No good. Another. Still nothing. Then he tried Alani's old encryption code, the one from her lab work. The one only a few trusted people knew. Click. The door opened with a groan. Inside, a sleek but dusty transport skimmer rested on its side. He rushed to it, pulled open the cockpit, and started the boot-up sequence. Lights flickered. Engines hummed. It was working. Suddenly, the roof above cracked open with a deafening roar. A search drone dropped in, scanning the bay. Its lights found Mason instantly. He dove into the skimmer and slammed the door shut just as the drone fired. The blast rocked the cockpit, but the armor held. Mason grabbed the control stick and launched the skimmer into the air. The drone gave chase, but as Mason flew low over the ruins, dodging and weaving between towers, another signal lit up on his radar. A friendly beacon. He looked up. The extraction pod was back, and it wasn't empty. The extraction pod dropped like a falling star, cutting through smoke and fire as it chased the signal below. Inside, Alani gripped the controls tightly. She wasn't a trained pilot, but she remembered enough from her old science missions. And her heart refused to let Mason face this alone. Come on, she whispered, watching the radar. She spotted him. The skimmer low, fast, damaged on one side, dodging between broken towers. Behind it, a large drone fired again, sending blue energy bolts that missed by inches. Mason was flying hard, but he wouldn't last long. She flipped a switch. The pod's weapon system was limited, but it had one rail pulse left. Target lock, the onboard AI said. Fire. The pulse beam shot down from above, striking the drone directly on its central eye. The drone jerked once, then exploded. Midair, raining black metal over the buildings. Inside the skimmer, Mason gasped and looked up. The pod was above him, lights blinking. A hatch opened. Can you dock? Alani's voice came through the com. Mason coughed into the mic. Only one way to find out. He pushed the skimmer toward the pod, rising fast. The pod adjusted position, dropping a magnetic link. It was Dangerous, any mistake at this speed would kill them both. But they had no other choice. The skimmer's hull scraped against the side of the pod, and with a loud metallic snap, the docking magnets locked in. Mason pushed himself up through the hatch. Alani grabbed his arm and helped him in. The door sealed shut behind them. "You came back," he said, breathless. "I didn't leave you to die," she answered. He smiled weakly, then passed out. Hours later, the pod was back in orbit. Medical staff patched up Mason's wound. Alani stayed by his side, her hand never leaving his. The Earth cruiser hovered at the edge of Zalari space. Engines quiet, shields active. The war hadn't started yet, but tension now coiled through every sector like a live wire. Captain Reyes of the Earth vessel walked into the med bay. "You both caused a political firestorm," she said. "Zalari demanded we return you." Sighed. "Your extraction was illegal. Are we going to?" Ilani asked. Reyes laughed once, coldly. "Not a chance, you're safe. For now." "But you both changed something down there," Mason stirred. "How bad is it?" Reyes leaned against the wall. "The tribunal declared your rescue a violation of galactic law. They're calling it aggression. Earth Command is waiting, watching, trying to avoid open war." "I didn't do this to start a war," Mason said. "I did it because she deserved better." Alani's voice softened. "You might have done more than save me, Mason. You showed others that the tribunal can be challenged." In the shadows of the galaxy, news of the event was already spreading. On planets ruled by fear, quiet rebellions stirred. On mining colonies where humans worked under harsh alien oversight, whispers spread of a man who faced the tribunal and lived. And deep inside the tribunal palace, Judge Relhara watched the footage in silence. Alani's face. The human's face. The pod rising into the sky. She turned off the screen and stepped into the council chamber. "I propose we vote again," she said calmly. The other judges looked at her in confusion. "On what?" "On the future of our laws," Relhara replied. "And whether this tribunal still serves the people or only punishes them." Her words sparked silence, but it was the kind of silence that meant change had begun. Back aboard the Earth cruiser, Mason sat alone in a recovery chair, staring out the wide observation window. Stars filled the dark, each one quiet and still. For a moment, there was peace. Ilani walked in, carrying 2 cups of synthesized tea. She handed him one. "I don't know what happens next," she said softly. "We'll figure it out," Mason replied. She sat beside him. "They'll keep coming, won't they? The Zalari. They won't forgive this." "No," he said. "But now we know they're afraid, not of me, of the truth. You were supposed to be silenced, but instead, your voice was heard." She looked down at her hands. "I wasn't brave on my own." "You didn't have to be," Mason said. "That's what teammates are for." The ship's lights dimmed as it entered slipstream mode. They were heading back to Earth, back to safety, or what little of it still existed. But both of them knew this wasn't over. The tribunal would come back stronger. And next time, it wouldn't be one trial. It would be a purge. Yet now Earth wasn't afraid. Not anymore, because one man had gone alone to face them. And one alien woman had dared to help humanity. And that ... changed everything. The Earth cruiser exited slipstream near Lunar Station Delta, a hidden outpost in the shadow of Earth's moon. It wasn't listed on any official galactic chart. From outside, it looked like an abandoned mining hub. But inside, it was one of Earth's most secure military research stations. Mason stepped onto the platform, still stiff from his injury. Ilani followed him closely, her eyes scanning everything. She had never been to this part of human space. The technology was rough, gritty, and practical, very different from the smooth design of Zalari cities. "Feels like a bunker," she said. "It is," Mason replied. "And it's where we'll be safe, if only for a little while." Inside, The command room, Commander Halley's greeted them. His face was lined with age, but his mind was sharp. He wore no medals, no symbols. Just the black and gray uniform of Earth Security Forces. "You've stirred the hornet's nest," Halley said, looking at Mason. "And now the sting is coming." "I had no choice," Mason answered. "They sentenced her for helping us." "That wasn't just a threat against her, it was a message to all of us." Halley's nodded once, slowly. "I agree. But we need more than emotion now. We need proof. We need allies, and we need a plan." Ilani stepped forward. "I have something." They turned toward her. "In the tribunal's archive chamber before. They arrested me. I copied encrypted files," she explained. "Hidden logs. I don't know everything inside them, but I know they're not legal by their own system standards." Halley's leaned forward. "What kind of files?" "Experimental records, human testing, forbidden weapons research. Things the tribunal denied even existed." Silence filled the room. Even the sound of machines seemed to pause. "If we release that information," Halley said slowly, "we could turn half the Galactic Council against them." "But only if it's verified," Mason said. "We'll need to decrypt it first." Ilani nodded. "I'll do it, but I need a secure lab. One with Earth-Solari interface software." "You'll get it," Halley said. "Work fast, we might not have much time." Elsewhere in the galaxy, in a secret chamber beneath the tribunal tower, the judges gathered again. This time, fewer voices were calm. "They escaped," one judge growled. "And now Earth shields her like she's one of them." "She is one of them," Relhara said softly. The room turned toward her. "She chose them. She defied our law, and still she survived." Another judge slammed his hand on the table. "This cannot be tolerated. We must send a message." "Yes," said another. "Earth believes it can protect her. Let's see how long that belief holds." They launched Operation Silence the same day. A stealth fleet of dark Solari ships left their space. No signals, no announcements. Their target, Lunar Station Delta Dot, but Earth intelligence caught wind of something. 2 days later, a hidden satellite near Saturn picked up strange engine signatures. They didn't match any commercial travel logs, and the pattern was military.in. The lab, Ilani worked non-stop. Her fingers moved across the screen, breaking layers of code. She barely ate, barely slept. Mason stayed nearby, watching over her, running errands, keeping security teams alert. "You should rest," he said one evening. She shook her head. "Almost there." He sat beside her quietly. Her skin glowed faintly in the dim light, a natural shimmer her kind carried. She looked so fragile. And yet, she was stronger than most humans Mason had ever known. He thought about telling her how he felt, about what had changed inside him since they met. But the words stayed in his throat. "Got it," she said suddenly. He leaned in. "What?" "The files opened. Look." She showed him the screen. Dozens of logs filled the monitor, each one stamped with secret tribunal codes. Inside, data on illegal hybrid soldiers, stolen genetic material from human prisoners, plans to build mind control networks using nanotech. Mason's face turned cold. "We can't keep this quiet." "Then let's show the galaxy what the tribunal really is," Ilani said. An hour later, Halley's uploaded the data to trusted neutral channels. Scientists, council members, and political rebels across the stars received copies. Within 12 hours, the story hit Galactic broadcasts. The tribunal called it lies, but the evidence was too clear, too real. Protesters marched in cities across Zilari space. Alien leaders demanded an inquiry. The Galactic Council called for an emergency meeting. The tribunal was losing control, but they had one move left. As the stars turned and warships repositioned across systems, the stealth fleet arrived just outside Earth's moon. Silent, deadly, Ready. Inside Lunar Station Delta, the alarm blared. Mason's eyes met Alan's. They found us. And this time, the tribunal wasn't coming to make threats. They were coming to finish what they started. Asterisk. The red warning lights flashed across every corridor of Lunar Station Delta. The deep metallic voice of the emergency system echoed throughout the base. Alert. Enemy ships approaching. Defensive grid activating. Prepare for impact. Mason jumped from his chair, pulling on a tactical vest. Across the room, Alani stood frozen, staring at the screen showing dozens of Zalari ships surrounding the dark side of the moon. This is a full strike fleet, she said quietly. They're not here to make arrests. They're here to wipe us out. Mason already knew. They want to silence you and everything you exposed. Commander Halley's appeared on the main holoscreen. His face was calm, but his voice sharp. We've got 6 minutes before they breach low orbit. Get to the defense tower now. Mason nodded and grabbed his rifle. Alani stopped him. I'm coming too. You should stay in the shelter. No, this is my fight as much as yours. He hesitated, then gave a short nod. Then let's go. They raced down the narrow corridors of the base. Soldiers ran in every direction, prepping for battle. Drones activated. Shield walls powered up. Lunar Station Delta wasn't built for war, but it had enough teeth to bite. They reached the defense control room just as the first wave hit the outer perimeter. Energy cannons fired into the sky. Blue beams slammed against the Zalari shields. One of the tribunal's small cruisers exploded, its wreckage falling silently toward the surface, but more followed. Focus fire on their command vessel. Halley's ordered through the disrupt their coordination. Mason stood at the central terminal, watching targeting data. Alani worked beside him, rerouting power from life support into the rail batteries. Suddenly, a loud shockwave hit the station. The walls trembled. They're firing disruptor bombs, she shouted. They're trying to crash our power core. We have to hold, Mason said. Just a few more minutes. The council's emergency vote is underway. If they vote to sanction the tribunal, this whole thing ends. But if they don't, she whispered, then we go down fighting. Outside, a second Earth cruiser dropped from orbit, taking heavy damage. But it brought reinforcements. Smaller fighters launched, engaging the Zalari ships head-on. Explosions lit up the space above the moon like a silent firestorm. Inside the base, one of the shields collapsed and an entire wall burst open as a Zalari strike team broke through with heavy armor. Alien troops stormed in, weapons drawn, firing. At anything that moved, Mason turned instantly, pulling Alani behind cover. Stay down. Earth soldiers pushed back, but the tribunal fighters were trained for extermination. No mercy, no prisoners. Alani spotted something behind the broken wall, a control panel linked to the secondary defense grid. But it was on the other side of the firefight. If I can get to that panel, I can activate the imp traps, she said. You'll be exposed. We'll both die anyway if I don't. Mason looked into her eyes. There was no fear, only fire. He raised his rifle. I'll cover you, go. Alani ran. Plasma bolts sizzled past her. One grazed her leg, but she didn't stop. She reached the panel, typed fast. Mason laid down suppressing fire, keeping the enemy back. With a scream of sparks, the floor traps. AC to IVATE. A burst of electromagnetic pulses exploded around the intruders, disabling their weapons and scrambling their helmets. They fell one by one, stunned or unconscious. Earth soldiers moved in quickly to secure them. Alani limped back too. Mason sighed, clutching her side. You okay? He asked. I'll live, she said, breathless. More explosions sounded from above, but then silence. The main screen blinked. A message from the Galactic Council. Commander Halley's appeared on the feed, his voice clear. The vote has passed. The Council has officially condemned the tribunal. All hostile actions must cease. Any attack now will be seen as war against the entire coalition. Mason exhaled. We did it. But Alani shook her head. No, not yet. From the window above the station, one final ship approached. It didn't match the other Zilari designs, sleek, black, unmarked. That's not part of the fleet. Mason muttered. Inside the ship, alone, sat a single-figure Judge Relhara. She sent a private transmission. I wish to speak with the human and the scientist. Alone. No weapons. No soldiers. Mason narrowed his eyes. She's coming to finish it, Elani said. Or she's coming to end it her way. They looked at each other, then back at the screen. One last meeting, one final decision, and the war would either truly begin or finally end. The sleek black ship landed gently on the dark surface outside Lunar Station Delta. No escorts followed it. No weapons powered up. Just silence and shadow. Inside the landing bay, Mason stood with Alani at his side. His rifle was slung across his shoulder, but not aimed. Elani leaned slightly on him, her legs still sore, but her posture proud. Neither of them spoke as the ramp lowered. Judge Relhara stepped down slowly, her robes fluttering in the thin lunar breeze. She removed her hood. Her expression was calm but not cold. There was something else in her eyes, regret, memory, maybe guilt. I came alone, she said, and not to fight. Mason nodded once. Why are you here? Relhara's gaze shifted to Elani. Because I remember who you were before they silenced you. Before they called your kindness treason. You didn't speak for me then, Elani replied quietly. I couldn't. The tribunal watches its own. But I followed what happened. And I saw what you did. What you gave to the humans. What they gave back. She looked at Mason. What he risked for you. Mason's voice was firm. You helped lead the same tribunal that sentenced her to death. Now you're here after the council's vote. What do you want? I want to end it, Relhara said. She reached into her robe and slowly pulled out a small black cube. She handed it to Elani. This is a master key. It holds every hidden tribunal file, every experiment, every prisoner record, every secret order from the past 2 centuries. No encryption, no lies. Elani stared at it. Why give this to me? Because it's time, Relhara said. The tribunal isn't justice anymore. It's fear wearing a robe. But fear only works until someone stands up to it. You already have, so has he. Now it's my turn. Mason watched her closely. You're betraying your own kind. Relhara shook her head. No, I'm saving what's left of it. She stepped back, her tone more serious. They'll still try to silence you. The ones still loyal to power, but once this data spreads, even they won't survive the storm. She paused. You may not see peace in your lifetime, but you'll see change. Then, without waiting for thanks, she turned and walked back. Up the ramp of her ship. It lifted off moments later and vanished into the blackness above. Mason and Elani stood in silence, the cube in her hand glowing softly. That night, inside Lunar Station Delta, the files were broadcast across the stars, worlds that once feared the tribunal now rose against them. Old enemies joined hands, young rebels became leaders. Even some within the tribunal itself defected, handing over more evidence of corruption, control, and cruelty. The empire of silence began to crack. Weeks later, Elani stood at a podium in Earth's Central Council Hall. She was no longer a prisoner, no longer a fugitive. She was now a symbol. A bridge between 2 species. A voice that had once been punished now honored. Mason watched from the side, arms crossed, a small smile on his face. She spoke simply. We cannot undo what the tribunal has done. But we can make sure no court ever again punishes compassion. That no voice is buried for speaking truth. And that no human or alien stands alone. The room erupted in applause. After the ceremony, Elani found Mason outside in the quiet of the night. "You didn't tell them everything," he said. "No," she replied. "Some truths are still too sharp. But the most important parts are out now." He nodded. "What happens to you next?" "I don't know. I'm not a politician. I'm not a hero either." "I think you're both," Mason said. She smiled, then took his hand. "I just want to live. Somewhere no one owns me. Somewhere I can still help people, with you." He didn't answer right away. He just nodded and squeezed her hand gently. Far above Earth, in the ruins of fallen tribunal satellites and drifting warships, the stars remained the same. Cold, distant, silent. But something had changed. One alien woman who dared to care. One human man who refused to give up. And together, they broke the silence of an empire. Not with war, but with truth. And with that, the galaxy took its first breath toward peace.